Really, wellness should be simple. It should be a part of integrating very easily into whatever busy life, whatever schedule, whatever you're currently navigating.
Hi there, Rockstar, and welcome to episode 302 of Stand Out, Get Noticed. I'm Christina Canters, a communication skills specialist, and I'm all about helping ambitious leaders and teams to build unshakable confidence and create more impact at work. Have you ever had one of those moments where you know you need to stay calm and professional, but you just can't help it and your emotions just take over? Maybe your heart is racing, your mind goes blank, or you just feel completely overwhelmed. We've all been there. I've been there. And today's episode is all about helping you understand what's actually happening in your nervous system when that occurs and how to get back in control. And I'm so excited to be joined in this episode by the wonderful Sonia Statman. She helps women in business and leadership to design sustainable ways of working that supports their energy, capacity, and performance without burning out. Let's do it. I have to tell everyone, we actually had this podcast scheduled for a week ago, but 10 minutes before we jumped on the call, I was in a very heated phone conversation with a client of ours. This is for my other business, Podcast Services Australia. And it's this client who's been particularly difficult, probably the most difficult client we've ever worked with. And I'd had a very, very heated conversation with her where I found myself getting so frustrated and annoyed. And normally I'd like to say I'm pretty good at regulating myself. I'm pretty good at staying calm and professional in the moment. But this one phone call, it just pushed me over the edge. And then with Sonia, when I joined the podcast call with you, I actually burst into tears because I was so stressed and anxious and worked up. And I couldn't, I wasn't in a good place to have this conversation. But a week later, here we are. I've had some time to breathe. And so, Sonia, my first question to you is, this dysregulation, this inability to keep it together, why is this happening to me? Why does it happen?
Well, look, I think we have to kind of start with addressing what dysregulation is.
Sure.
And, dysregulation is really when our nervous system is no longer functioning in a regulated and normal fashion, right? And it's really just because of stress responses that we have, which is very natural, which is very much a part of our human experience. And, stress is just this unconscious automatic response that our body has when we encounter anything that feels like pressure, demand, or, dysregulates us. And that's really different for every single person. So all of us have different triggers. All of us have very sort of natural responses to stress. It's very human, and we're never going to stop that process. Dysregulation is a part of our daily life. And so I think sometimes what happens is people think, oh, I'm going to come in and I'm going to learn to regulate all the time. I'm going to learn to never experience stress. I'm going to eliminate stress from my life. It's just not possible. We are wired to dysregulate, and we are wired to regulate. And so I think, understanding that this is sort of a natural response to stress and that it's accumulated. Right? So we have accumulated stress. It's never sort of just one thing, right? It's never just like, oh, it's that one person that we just talked to. Oftentimes it's a myriad of things that have added on and accumulated, and then we have dysregulation. So it can be lack of sleep, or it can be a hard day, or it can be something your partner said, or it can be all these kind of accumulated things that add up to stress and dysregulate our system.
Yeah, it's almost is it kind of like a bucket that gets full of water? Each bit of stress kind of adds to your bucket. And then what you're saying, Sonia, sounds like when you've that one thing that overfills that bucket, and then it all flows out, and then that's what comes out in that emotional dysregulation. Is that like a metaphor that works for this?
Yeah, it's really good actually. And, really resilience, because we talk a lot about resilience, but
Yeah.
oftentimes we don't really define what that actually means. And
Yes.
resilience is actually our capacity to handle stress, adversity, and change. And so the bucket is based on our resilience. And our resilience changes. It's not like we're born with like a certain level of resilience. We
Mm.
have more resilience at certain times in our life. We have less resilience in others. We can build resilience. And so, I think, yeah, it's really about that capacity. And I think it's important to have compassion with ourselves because sometimes our buckets are just really full. And so we're going to experience more dysregulation on a regular basis. But there is very simple things we can do to shift that, right? To understand, what we need and how to be more regulated.
Absolutely. And I'd love to get into those a little bit later in the conversation. I do want to move into burnout. So tell me how burnout and being dysregulated are connected.
Yeah, so burnout is really chronic accumulated stress that's not been successfully managed. So you kind
Mm.
of think of it, I like to think of it in sort of these three buckets. You have acute stress. So something happens, you have a natural stress response, and then you go back into regulation naturally. So that's kind of like what we might call an acute stress. Oh, someone scares us, we have a response, and then all of a sudden we're regulated again. Medium stress is sort of where we know there's an end point. So it's like we have stress, we know that there's a lot going on, but we see the light at the end of the tunnel. We know that in 2 weeks that project's going to be complete, that we're going to have some space and we can regulate again.
Could it be like you're getting ready to present and you're really stressed, like working towards this big presentation, but okay, after the presentation, it's going to be okay?
Yeah, and things will go back to normal. It's like you have that hope or that awareness. But then what happens when we have accumulated stress that's not managed? So we never kind of put that brake on stress. We never get regulated. It's just like one thing after another, after another, after another. That's what leads to burnout. And so burnout is literally that feeling where there's no end point, there's no
Mm.
relief, and it's not a matter of just like, disconnecting and watching a movie or disconnecting and being on your phone. It's like
Yeah.
there's a need to truly regulate.
I feel like I was in that space during winter last year when I had a newborn baby, and we were
Mhm.
and a 4-year-old or 3-year-old, and we were sick all the time. It was dark, it was cold. My parents were away. We didn't have any support, and I actually started seeing a therapist because I was like, and I've never in my life been like, I need a therapist. But that point, I needed a therapist. And she said, I think you're burning out. And I was like, what? No, I was like in denial. And she was like, no, it's like this. And now that you're saying, Sonia, like this accumulated stress over time with no endpoint, that's what it feels like when you have a newborn baby and you're in the depths of winter. It's so
Yeah.
hard to see that endpoint. Sonia, tell me, have you experienced burnout before or extended times where you had this kind of emotional dysregulation?
Yes, actually, a lot in my life. I mean, I've been in business for 25 years. I was a single parent for quite a long time of that. I, had a very kind of rocky and traumatic childhood. So it was like I sort of lived in dysregulation. And I think a lot of us do, right? We live in burnout. We live in dysregulation. And especially for those of us who are like high achievers, we're go-getters and the world sees us as like, oh, we're doing amazing, we're successful, we'll do whatever it takes. But inside, we're exhausted. Inside, we're fatigued. Inside, we constantly feel stress. And so there's just like this dysregulation. And I didn't even really understand what it was, or I couldn't have labeled it years ago.
Mm,
But I was just always exhausted. And
yeah.
I think running a business, what I sort of had to do was learn to create and design a business that worked so that I didn't feel dysregulated, so that I
Mm,
didn't feel burnt out all the time. And so I learned to design new systems for business and really how to completely rewire the way I thought about everything in order to experience regulation. And
yeah.
it took me a really long time. And so I think, for me, I kind of lived in dysregulation most of my life. And so it's very different to feel what it feels like to be regulated more often.
And so being in that space, did it then feel like that was just normal?
Oh yeah, 100%. And that's the thing is like we're so good at normalizing dysregulation that it just seems like it just is how we live. It's just what we know. It's just what's comfortable even to us in a way. And so sometimes getting regulated at first, especially if we have a history of dysregulation, it can be very uncomfortable. So it's not all like, oh, calm and bliss when we're regulated. Like it can be abnormal to us. It can kind of feel like this is weird. I'm used to chaos or I'm used to feeling more stressed. And so yeah, it was completely normalized for me. And I thought I was healthy,
Yeah.
until I really understood what was happening.
So tell me about the moment when you realized, oh, this actually is not this shouldn't be normal for me. This is not okay.
Oh my gosh, there's like several kind of pivotal pieces, I think, right? There's not one moment where I was like, "Oh, this isn't okay." But I think for me, oftentimes it was like something super chaotic happened. So like, I had a very tumultuous first marriage. This was a while ago. And sort of in that time period of my life, everything kind of burned to the ground. And
Mm,
so that sort of abrupt massive change in my life, and I was a parent to a 2-year-old, so I became a single parent very quickly.
yeah.
My husband was doing drugs. It was like a very, very intense time period. And so I think that sort of shattering of everything allowed me to step back and really look at my life and look at how I was experiencing life and what was happening on a regular basis, and then I was able to make changes. But the pattern was so deeply woven into me that, I've had several sort of moments like that. COVID was another one. Like I was stuck in the US during COVID. We were basically at home most of the time. And it was another kind of moment of stepping back and looking at, okay, what do I want to experience? Am I still running some of these patterns? And how can I feel more peace? How can I be more regulated? So it's like there's lots of little pivotal moments. I don't think it gets to a place where we're like, we're burnt out and it's the end, right? It's often like a questioning of what's happening in our life and a reevaluation.
Can I ask what when you mentioned that there were a few of these things that continued to like these old patterns, can you give an example of one of those patterns that would keep coming back that would lead to dysregulation for you?
Yeah. I mean, I am, like I said, a high achiever. So it's like
Yep.
pushing myself to complete projects, pushing myself to accomplish the things I set out to accomplish. I mean, I think I'm a visionary. So I have these ideas about things I want to create, and I will go full force until they're created and not listen to my body. Right. And not listen to the way I'm feeling or what I'm experiencing. And so now that's very different, like to show kind of a before and after. Now I listen to my body. So I still have aspirations. I still have big things I'm doing. I still have big projects, but I really honor my body and what it needs. And I honor the regulation process. And I also communicate it. So, like, if I'm working with someone, I say, hey, I'm feeling quite dysregulated right now.
Yep.
And I really just need a moment, or I really just need another day. Can we, come back to this in a couple days? So it's like
Mm.
there's this ability to have language for it, to be able to communicate what it feels like. And everybody responds very well to it. Like they understand or they really recognize that this is something they've experienced as well. And so it's very powerful.
What are the indications that your body gives you to tell you that you are dysregulated and or heading towards burnout?
Well, it's like there's two different types of dysregulation, and I don't think the second type is talked about very often. When we're
Hmm.
regulated, we kind of have, just to tap into the science really quick, we kind of have these two parts to our nervous system. We have three parts actually, but the two parts we talk about are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is like our gas pedal, right? So it's like it gets us going, it gets us motivated, it causes us to take action. We want a sympathetic system that works. It's very important. And we want a parasympathetic system because it puts the brake on the gas pedal. It allows us to relax, it allows us to digest, it allows us to be calm. And so we want kind of that gas and brake pedal working in unison to like motivate us and then to calm us and back and forth. What happens is we get stuck in the systems, and that's dysregulation. So when we're stuck in the sympathetic system, we're anxious, we're on the go all the time, our heart is racing, we're feeling stressed. And that's really what we talk about oftentimes when we
Mm.
say, I'm feeling stressed. We're activated in our sympathetic
Yeah.
system. But you can also get stuck in the parasympathetic system, which is also called the dorsal. And basically, you're depressed. You have no energy. So, like in opposition to kind of this place we talk about where we're really stressed, it's like there's no motivation to do anything. There's like not hope that there's something that we can escape. It's like there is this very depressed kind of feeling. And so both of those are dysregulated.
Right.
So
Okay.
I think primarily for me, I experience more of the sympathetic system when I'm dysregulated. So my heart's racing. I'm feeling a bit anxious. I'm running on all cylinders. One
Yeah.
of the things I think we don't talk about is when we're activated and we're sort of dysregulated, our conscious mind, our thinking mind, our reasoning mind, it goes offline, right? In order for our body to be able to respond to whatever threat we're experiencing. And so all of a sudden we have brain fog, right? Like how many people are like living day to day in brain fog, and they don't understand that part of that is because their sympathetic system is very activated. So I might feel brain fog. I can't quite think straight. I'm just trying to respond to everything. I'm hyper
Yeah.
vigilant. That's a really, big thing for me as well when I'm dysregulated.
That sounds very much like baby brain.
Yeah.
Because like when you're
Yeah.
a mom and you've got like young kids, it's stressful because you're constantly trying to put your attention everywhere and protect that child from killing themselves and protect that child from like smashing their face open on that thing. And they're yelling at you like, I want food, I want water, they need a nappy change, they need this, they need clothes. And you're just constantly on the go. And then as a result, I've experienced it, the brain fog, like I can't remember what day it is. I can't remember where I put my keys.
Mhm.
I can't remember why I
Yeah.
walked into that room.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think we really understand how many things are impacted by stress,
Mm,
right? So many physical ailments, so many mental ailments, so many emotional things that we experience. They're all really, really connected to how we experience stress, and not just like the reaction or the acute stress, but how we have that accumulated
yeah.
stress.
So Sonia, tell me, how did you then go from, experiencing this dysregulation and working out ways to help it within yourself as well? How did you go from that to then supporting other people to do the same thing?
I think what happened for me is I really came to this realization that if everyone just regulated their nervous system more often, we would have a completely different world. And so, when I was looking at what impact I want to have in the world, I realized that such a core piece is regulation. And so I still work with women in business, I still work with women in leadership, but we start with regulation, because if they aren't regulated or they don't have practices for regulation, no work we do is going to be truly effective and long lasting, because that foundation is missing. And so, I think it was just in so many years of working with people, because I've worked with thousands of people over the last 25 years, I just started to see like this is the piece that's been
Yeah.
missing.
And with your clients, what are the tools or techniques that you share with them to help them regulate themselves better?
So first of all, I'm a big believer in micro practices, right? So, it's really hard to implement habits. Like, so a lot of people say, okay, I want to exercise. Exercise is good for me. I'm going to exercise an hour a day. I'm going to put that somewhere into my busy schedule. But I'm really big on like 5-minute practices, 10-minute practices, things we can pair with already like really well-worn habits that we have. So like with our morning coffee, right? Or, with our bedtime routine. And so these micro practices are really powerful, because regulating even just a little bit each day puts that brake on stress and shifts your system, and it actually rewires your brain and your nervous system. So I'm big on the micro practices, and really everything is very simple. There's so many ways to regulate your nervous system. So, just having sort of good sleep hygiene, right? Being able to go outside and get some sunlight. It's like there's these things that we've been taught over and over and over again that are good for us, but we just don't put them into practice. And so some of my favorite tools, like there's just so many things. Like there's aromatherapy is a really great one. So our sort of nose nerves are directly connected to our nervous system.
Okay.
So, and this is the kind of one of the key things is when we want to regulate our nervous system, we can't do it through our brain because our brain is offline. So we can't do
Right.
it through thinking.
Okay.
We can't do it through reasoning. We can't do it through like imagining something. Our brain is not working. It has to be physical and automatic. And so, for instance, aromatherapy, because when we smell, it directly impacts our nervous system. It's really great to find a scent that relaxes you. And this will be different for every single person. So like I really get annoyed when people are like, you should just do lavender, or
Yeah.
well, lavender might not work for you. You could have symbolism with that, or
I was about to say, like, tell me what to buy.
yeah. Usually what I suggest to my clients is like go to a place where they have a bunch of essential oils and just keep smelling the oils, and you'll get to one where it's like, it's like you can feel your body relax. And then it's great to be able to carry it in like a roll on or something. So like let's say you're in a meeting and you're feeling really anxious, like, and you've got it, in your purse, you can just kind of rub it on your wrist and kind of be like,
Discreetly, yeah.
it's like really subtle, but it's like an instant impact to your nervous system.
Okay.
So that's one I really think is great. Another one I talk about is taking a sensory pause. So really being able to get like sensation is a big piece of, sort of regulating your nervous system. And so I always tell people you could excuse yourself and go to the bathroom. You could wash your hands like under cold water
Okay.
and really notice how it feels, right? So you're not just like washing your hands and in your head thinking.
Yeah.
You're actually feeling, how does this water feel against my skin? You can change from hot to cold, which is called titration. And in that process, you're going to regulate your nervous system.
Wow.
So there's very easy
Yeah, that's super easy.
techniques. Yeah, yeah. And grounding is another one. So a lot of people talk about that, where you go and you put your bare feet on the ground. If you can access, like it can be grass or stone or anything that's kind of natural element. Putting that barefoot and feeling what that feels like, there's a lot of regulation in that. Nature is naturally a co-regulator.
And so if you can do these things just like for a few minutes each day instead of like doing like a 1 hour float tank once a week.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's cheaper.
I love float tanks. I love float tanks, so do that as well. But, I think it's really about these micro practices more often. So usually what I tell people is you can, have a list of tools. And when I'm working with clients, I help them find the tools that work best for them because everyone's a little different. Some things work really good for some people, some less. So we kind of discover their toolbox, and then they can basically use the toolbox anytime they need it, anytime they feel stressed, anytime they get in a fight with their partner, anytime they feel like they can't sleep and they're anxious before bed. But they also can do sort of what I call a resilience practice by waking up in the morning and doing this practice as part of their morning routine and doing some practice as part of their nighttime routine. And so again, that just rewires your brain and your nervous system every time you do it.
I love that. And I get that it's going to be different for each person. Before I had kids, I'd be like the early riser. I'd get up at like 5:30 and I would stretch and I would meditate and I would journal and I would, like do like 10 minutes of writing. And that was a really nice start to my day. And now it's like children like yelling at me to wake up. And so sometimes I feel like I'm just starting the day on, and I guess like if you were to say to me, oh, just like have a quiet like 30 minutes in the morning, it's like, no, that's actually not going to happen. So I know for me, like I'd have to find a pocket in the day, maybe when the baby is napping, where it's like, okay, now's a much more realistic time. So I really like that idea of like finding something that works for you.
Yeah. And it's really like wellness should be easy. And this is one of the things that I feel like is sort of my differentiator in my philosophy is that even when you see a lot of people trying to integrate wellness into their lives, it's like this another thing on their to-do list, another thing that they have to do. It's like it doesn't feel easeful, right? It doesn't feel easy. It doesn't feel like it's and so really wellness should be simple. It should be a part of integrating very easily into whatever busy life, whatever schedule, whatever you're currently navigating, it should be easy to fit in. And so that's why macro practices work and really designing and tailoring it to who you are and how you best operate works really well too. And there's just so many techniques that can be used. I mean, one of the techniques I really like is called exteroception.
Okay.
And so it's this idea, it's a fancy word, but it's really this idea for focusing on details outside of you, right? Because we have these sort of sensors in our nervous system, and we're able to like sort of look at, like, say, I'm looking at this glass, if you can see it. And, I might look at the details of this glass, like, the smoothness of its texture, the water that's moving inside, and I'm really focused on this specific details. I might notice how there's a little blemish here in this glass. And doing that regulates our nervous system. So, one of the things that can be really cool for moms is that, let's say they're feeding their baby, right? Or they're rocking their baby to sleep. They can focus on the softness of the hair, right? We do this naturally anyway. We can focus on their little hands and all the little details. And that right there is regulating our nervous system.
Can I ask, Sonia, if someone's already in a stressful scenario, so let's say you're on stage, you're presenting, let's say you're in a meeting, you're on a phone call and it's getting heated, or you're in that argument with your partner, whatever it is, are there some things we can do in that moment, because maybe we can't just walk out and put our feet on the gravel, what can we do in that moment to help regulate ourselves a little bit better?
Yeah. So one of my favorite things in those kind of moments is just to rub my fingers together.
Oh, okay.
Right. And so notice how that feels. So it's like, again, it's mindfulness, right? We're really talking about a mindfulness practice. So it's like you're talking to your partner and, they won't really notice what you're doing. You just, kind of rub and you notice how it feels to have those fingers rubbing against each other. So that is called interoception. So it's like another kind of sensor that we have that helps regulate our nervous system. And so, you can just rub those fingers together while you're in the midst, and just focusing on that for a couple of seconds will switch your nervous system. And so, it calms you down a little bit more. Our breathing, right? A lot of people talk about, taking a few deep breaths, all of that is really powerful in the moment that you are experiencing this. And so again, it's great to have sort of your go-to toolbox, because you don't want to have to remember a bunch of things
True.
while you're in the middle of a heated argument.
Absolutely.
So I always try to encourage people, pick some things that work ahead of time. And then, oh, I'm starting to feel that palpitation in my heart. I'm starting to feel, this overwhelm. Okay, I know I can rub my fingers together, right? It's like, you have kind of those go-to tools that you practice, and it's almost like body memory.
Yes. That's absolutely a key piece. And that's something I share with my clients as well. Anytime if you're looking to improve your communication or be more assertive, these are things that you need to be practicing ongoing. It's not just about performing really well in that one meeting and then being like, oh, I'm done now, I don't have to practice anymore. It's like, no, you got to practice in every single meeting that one particular technique.
100%. What happens is we build resilience. Every time we practice, we build resilience. Every time we practice, we have more capacity. So it might be harder for us to be dysregulated, but if we stop practicing altogether, eventually we'll go back to dysregulation. So it's not like I can just never practice regulation because I've been doing these practices for so long. Eventually I might have more resilience than the average person. I might get dysregulated less. But eventually I'll start getting dysregulated again because I'm not practicing. So the practicing is a very important piece.
It's like Roger Federer getting to world number one and being like, yeah, I'm good now. I don't have to practice anymore. Yeah. I'm at number one. It's like, no, he's still practicing every day.
That's right. So important.
So it sounds like, Sonia, back to our bucket analogy. metaphor. I can never remember which is the one. When we do these micro practices, so I'm rubbing my fingers, I'm maybe going outside, I'm noticing details on a cup. It sounds like then the water in the bucket is like coming down a little bit each time we do that, and the little bit of stress will bring the water up again. But then the techniques that we use will bring it back down. It's about sort of maintaining that balance, I suppose, and not allowing the water to then overflow.
Yes, and the good part is as well, not only are we decreasing the water in the bucket, we're growing the bucket. So it's like our
Yes.
capacity is actually getting bigger. So, I think that's important. So we're doing not only this beautiful job of like decreasing the water in the moment in the bucket, we're also making our bucket bigger. So, it's powerful.
Sonia, this has been absolutely wonderful, and I've been taking lots of notes about these micro practices, which I'm absolutely going to implement. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you would love to share with our audience today?
One of the things that I also would just add is that, we need to have a little bit more compassion with ourselves. We're really hard on ourselves sometimes if we don't keep it all together, if we get dysregulated. But it's such a natural part of how we are wired. We don't have any control in not being dysregulated sometimes. Like it's just natural. Everyone is there. I mean, a lot of people try to control themselves or control their dysregulation, and they're dysregulated under the surface, which is not very healthy. So I think just like normalizing that everyone gets dysregulated. Everyone. There's not a single person in the world that does not get dysregulated. It's literally part of our humanity. And so I feel like when I teach that, like sometimes when I'm teaching teams about dysregulation, if I can just help them understand that it's normal, and that, we can have compassion for ourselves and each other when there's dysregulation, I think that right there is key. And it allows us to maybe not be so hard on ourselves, not to be so demanding of ourselves when we have this experience, and knowing that we can do something about it very easily.
I think that comes back to, especially when we're working with people, allowing ourselves to be vulnerable and saying, hey, I got a bit dysregulated back there and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to behave that way. Can we move forward? Or being able to say about someone else, oh, she's a bit dysregulated at the moment. Maybe let's, approach this tomorrow, and give her some space for now. Like, wouldn't that be amazing if workplaces were like that and were able to, as you say, put language to what's going on?
100%. And thinking about too is like parenting, right? Like our kids get very dysregulated, especially when they're young, like tantrums, that's a dysregulation.
Yeah.
And sometimes you see people, so harshly trying to control their kids' dysregulation when really it's like, oh, they're dysregulated. That's okay. We can help them do something to regulate, right? We can help them regulate. I think, it just changes everything, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in how we're operating in business, whether it's with our partners or with our kids. There's so many things that change if we just come to understand this science about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there'll be less labeling, less of like, well, he's being a dick. It's like, no, he's just dysregulated.
That's right.
He still needs to like learn how to, manage himself better. But, we're all a work in progress. We're all getting there. Sonia, can you share, where can people find you?
So you can always find me at soniastatman.com. And I am working on a few things right now. So I'm going to be launching some audio courses that are done sort of via private podcasts. And I'm really excited about them. They'll sort of be intro courses to regulation and navigating burnout and stress.
Very exciting. Awesome. It's been absolutely wonderful having you on the show, Sonia. Thank you so much for sharing all your insights with us.
Oh, it's been wonderful. I appreciate it.
Huge thanks to Sonia Statman for sharing her practical and compassionate approach to managing stress. I'll put links to how you can connect with Sonia in the description of this episode. And look, if you found this episode helpful, please share it with your team or a friend who might be feeling overwhelmed at work. It really does help the podcast reach more people like yourself. Keep on being awesome, Rockstar. I'm Christina Canters, and this has been Stand Out, Get Noticed.